Welcome back to Film Bites. I'm Andy the Dad.
And I'm Jack the Lad.
This time we're looking at another horror, and it comes in the form of a sequel called The Nun 2. What do you think?
I actually quite enjoyed it. Put it this way, with The Nun 2, even before we went into seeing this, we heard pretty much mixed reviews. I think it was more to do with the first movie as well that people were a bit hesitant on because it didn't go down as well as what we thought it would. I mean, personally, I didn't mind the first one. I actually was quite enjoying it. That could be my bias towards it. I just turned 15 and I went into the cinema and that was my first horror movie in the cinema. So it could be that I'm kind of blinded by that. At the end of the day, I enjoyed the first movie, so going into the second one, I didn't really have many expectations whatsoever, but I thought it's quite a good movie. Good ghost story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I pretty much forgot the majority of the first film.
Yeah.
Going into this one, and that's probably no bad thing, really. I do enjoy the Conjuring movies, of which Valak, the main character, comes from. I enjoyed the first one the most. Second one is good, but definitely suspends disbelief a little bit more. So coming to The Nun 2, I was really an open book as to what this was going to be. And for the most part of the film, I was really pleasantly surprised by it. I thought it really created the mood.
Yes.
The setting was great. I thought the cinematography was really, really strong, especially in those darkened sequences. It really kind of captured the grittiness of the time in which it was set.
The corridors and the stairways.
I felt in places it did feel a little bit like The Devil's Backbone, Guillermo del Toro's movie. From a mood point of view and from cinematography, it did seem to hint at that on a number of occasions, and that was no bad thing. I think it told a very good ghost story, and that's important to underline. Ghost story.
Yes.
For the much part of that 2/3 before it went a bit mental in the third act.
I think the third act is one where I'm mixed. And it's not so much a bad thing, it's more towards it being where we've come from to where we are now. I think that's probably the way you can look at it. Because with the very first world-building movie, which was The Conjuring 1, it was very grounded, it was very much in-your-face horror, it was trying to take a bit of a spin on it, and it was one of James Wan's biggest movies as well.
Yes.
And this was, of course, the Warrens family, so this was very much keeping to the actual stories that had occurred, whilst also adding the fictionalised aspects as well.
Yeah.
So they created iconic moments with the clap scene, which was brilliant, and then it kind of built off of those movies as well. So I believe at this point we were getting an Annabelle movie, we were getting The Conjuring 2, and of course this is where The Conjuring 2 is important, because this is the first time we saw Valak. I have to say, after what we saw in the cinema, I am completely with you with what your statement was. Valak is the scariest, not in her own movies, but in The Conjuring 2, where she is first introduced.
Yes.
I think it's because she has less screen time. She is a presence that feels almost like this dreadful nature. So whenever you see her, you go, oh no.
Yeah.
You feel this impending sense of doom, and it is just terrifying.
I think the more they explain the character, the less you feel that sense of fear towards her.
Yeah, which is why the third act felt a bit, not flimsy, but almost all over the place.
For me, it wasn't that it was particularly unwatchable, because it really was watchable.
It was a spectacle.
It was entertaining enough.
Yeah.
But it felt like we'd kind of gone and stepped into the genre of Indiana Jones.
I mean, yes.
Quite an overblown conclusion to what had been a really good ghost story until that point.
I will say, even the first movie had that problem, the more I think about it. There was really interesting scenes. I quite like the jump scares. The lighting and effects were very much of a classic design of a horror movie, almost like a Hammer horror, as you've mentioned as well. Even in this one, there was definitely Hammer aspects of the lighting and
yeah, I think it actually goes back a little bit further than that. I think you can start talking about some of the Nosferatu stuff,
yeah,
like, and the Max Schreck stuff.
With the German expressionism.
Yeah, and maybe even Frankenstein to some extent, with the way that the walls are shot and the kind of ambience that gives off. I really liked the first 2/3 of the film. I can't say that I didn't like it at all, because I really did. I thought it was scored well. I thought the acting was good. I just think they probably chose to go the route of special effects a little bit too much in that last act.
Yeah.
And they could have held back, and they could have made a much more intriguing end to the story, I thought.
In terms of the overall mood of the film as well, with it being that impending sense of terror as well, I've got to say the set designs and the settings, there were some really gorgeous shots of the 50s. I thought it it was quite captivating in the sense of what was being shown.
Was it the 50s or was it a bit earlier?
I think it was 59.
Was that?
I seem to remember that 1959 was the very first thing they introduced us to, with the beginning sequence of the church in France.
Yeah.
And I thought that the set designs were great. They really just engaged you into the thought of, yes, this is definitely that time period. There's a sequence where they are rushing off to this building. I won't name what building, but it's the two nuns, so Sister Irene and the new introduced character as well, which unfortunately I forgot her name, but I know she's played by Storm Reid.
It's Deborah, I think. Yeah, Storm Reid.
Yeah,
Deborah.
who, by the way, I've got to add, I thought she did a very good job in this.
Yes.
She added to the movie in an interesting dynamic direction. And I've also got to say that her plot line, I thought, worked.
Yes.
It was simple, but it worked. And at the end of the day, it's not so much the characters we're overly engaged with, it's more what's going on with the nun, what's going on with the setting, but also the characters feed off of that to try and draw you in as a spectator.
Yeah.
But the setting, there's one scene where they're coming out of this location, they're going towards this next destination out of urgency. They get a taxi. If you look at that set design and the background and the lighting, it's very much, this is the 50s. I didn't question it. It was that kind of pristine set design that felt very smooth. It was wonderfully decorated. The costume department was great as well, I thought.
Yeah.
I've also got to say, in terms of a church, that was probably the best setting in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it had those elements of horror that were really nice.
It was strong.
I thought, yeah.
Very strong. Yeah, I mean, the acting, you've got to say that the performances are all very good throughout. I don't think anybody really lets it down. Teresa Farmiga, Sister Irene, I thought she played it very well. She did in the first film for me.
Yeah.
It was just in the first film, I don't think there was too much to work with.
Yeah.
But in this one, I thought it blended really, really well. I think, as you said, Storm Reid, very good. Anna Popplewell, who I think we last saw in Narnia all those years ago.
I thought that for a minute. I was like, whoa, haven't seen you since I was probably 5 when I was watching on DVD, which is nice to see her back again. And she did a good job as well with the kind of story that was being portrayed.
And we also have Kate Lee Rose Downey playing Sophie, who was very, very good, portraying the innocence throughout the movie.
And creates implications for sorts of things that could be happening in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if we see certain characters again, let's say.
Yes, absolutely. And I know the sequence you're referring to, and I thought there were 2 standout sequences in that line that both did extremely well. I mean, I've seen one in one of the trailers, so that it was the magazine stand. I've seen that in one of the trailers.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was particularly impressive and very well thought through. Yeah, I think overall, I certainly enjoyed this movie more than the first one.
Yeah.
I really wish they'd toned down what they did with the ending, because I think it did try, not spoil, but it did put a bit of a dampener on all the good work of the spooky stuff that they built in.
Which, as we were saying, the first one did the same thing with, am I allowed to say the object they used in the first movie?
Yeah.
The blood of Christ?
Yeah.
Which is just, wow. It's very much a Indiana Jones object that you would get to defeat this great big villain, which in this case...
But equally, you had similar plot lines in the Da Vinci Code, so we can't really single it out for that. But I thought this was a very watchable movie. It's one that I think you should we recommend and make your own mind up. It's certainly better than its precursor. I still don't think it's edging towards the standard that the Conjuring and the Conjuring 2 set, but it's still an entertaining addition to the franchise.
Oh, 100%. I've also got to mention that there is a mid-credit scene, so if you're waiting for a second one, don't worry, there's nothing at the end. It's just the mid-credits. That's all that there is as well.
And to be perfectly honest, I wasn't over-fussed about the mid-credit scene.
It's more of a, cool.
Yeah.
And that's all I really felt.
Primal classic?
I'd say it's a classic. It's not one where I'd be jumping up and down saying, that was amazing. But I would certainly say it was a very good ghost story. The third act had implications that I wasn't 100% on. As you say, there were a bit of an Indiana Jones kind of fiasco at the end, if let's say. There were good scares. Overall, the atmosphere, I thought, was much better than the first movie. The story was stronger. I think that was something that they needed to be a bit more on top of. Characters were satisfying. I thoroughly enjoyed the set designs as well, because I just believed what era we were in. That's a very good job from the set team. And the music, again, atmospheric. It played into the hands of what was going on. I thought it was all very well and neatly tied up.
Okay, so The Nun 2, check it out.
If you've enjoyed our podcast, please consider liking and subscribing for future episodes. Smash the like notification bell if you're on YouTube. Your support means the world to us. Please help us spread the word to grow the podcast. Until we meet again, film biters, we'll be watching. Will you?